everyone, and welcome to Behind the Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Maria Shabla, and today we are very excited to be sitting down with Chairman of the Board of the EOD Warrior Foundation and former EOD tech, Greg Mittelman, and former Executive Director of the EOD Warrior Foundation, Nicole Motsek. Welcome to the podcast.
It's going to be there, Marie.
Yeah, so today is a big day for the EOD Warrior Foundation, and we are getting ready to head to the memorial for the unveiling of the History Path. So today we're going to be sitting down and talking to Greg and Nicole to learn about the inspiration behind the History Path and what the History Path is.
Let me just start to say that EOD is alive and well as a career field because of honoring its history. The very earliest EOD techs forged their way during the attacks in Great Britain by recording their procedures so that the procedures were documented and people didn't continue to get hurt, which unfortunately was, as they first learned how to disarm bombs. So that was sort of a start of incorporating history by recording procedures. But all along the way, we've documented how we do business and the way we do business. And it's become important in knowing who and what we are as EOD techs and becoming better EOD techs. So history in itself organically is important to EOD, both with the memorial starts in 1969, of course, and that's important to us. But in the last recent years, what we've decided is that we need to record that legacy for the future. And so that people know about the memorial. And as time has progressed, the merger of the two organizations that created the EOD Warrior Foundation, Prince Garden, and all those things. And as we've done those over the years, found out that, unfortunately, we had to make some changes. In 2011, Nicole was our executive director of the EOD Memorial Foundation, and we had the unfortunate circumstance to realize that we had to make some changes to the memorial because of the loss of lives that we had as a result of the losses in Iraq and Afghanistan. So we looked at a lot of different ways on how we could accommodate more names on the memorial, and what was settled on was removing the cenotaphs and putting in smaller names that still had the same information, and that created more space. So as a result of a dire consequence, that we replaced all the cenotaphs and names, and then we had the cenotaphs. So Nicole and team that included many others over the years, trying to find a way to do something with those cenotaphs that was meaningful and significant. We weren't throwing them away; they were part of the memorial. When we moved the memorial down here from Indian Head, which I was fortunate to have a small piece in, a lot of that was brought down. So it was the same thought that we're not just getting rid of those things. And so we had a battle trying to figure out what could we do with these. And did we want to get something made out of these bronze tablets? Could we get somebody to melt them down and maybe make a bell or something that we could give the school, or something for the memorial, a badge? And what we found out, I think, mostly was that foundries wouldn't take the bronze tablets and melt them down because they were concerned about any impurities in there, since it wasn't their material and it would damage their smells. So we were stuck with these tablets for years and years and years. 2016, I found this email recently and I forwarded it to Nicole, and I kind of had an idea based on some discussions we'd had about history and things. I sent the email to Nicole and told her that, hey, maybe we can use the cenotaphs to record our history and mount something on, use them in some way to record our history. And that was sort of the genesis of it. Nicole put it on board, and we did some initial investigations about things we could do. And I'll mention a name right now that'll come back again, but I even contacted Brian Castor, who I'll mention him here in a minute as being one of the authors of the actual history. That's sort of it from my perspective, how she looked at it as the executive director and the problems that she faced.
Yeah, that was one piece of a vision to have complete the memorial grounds ultimately. Another piece was the Remembrance Garden, which we unveiled and completed and unveiled a couple of years ago. And so, especially as it was coming time for my transition away from the foundation, I think the History Path became more of a reality. The Remembrance Garden was completed, and the History Path will connect the memorial grounds to Remembrance Garden itself. And so it was just something that we thought, if we can get this done. The schoolhouse was fully on board with both projects, but the schoolhouse was also adamant that the Remembrance Garden should be the priority, a place for everyone to be able to go to remember and honor any fallen, any EOD tech who has passed away. So we did the Remembrance Garden first, and then the History Path, was the next and final piece that we really wanted to get done.
Wow, that's beautiful. So I'm kind of curious if the idea for the History Path came about, and you said 2016. When did the idea for the Remembrance Garden come about? Was it before or after, or?
I would say there were discussions about a monument or a statue that had been ongoing since the merger of the two organizations, and how to do that. The focus initially was, I think, more focused about perhaps those who'd taken their own lives in some quarters, and then other people to try and so that was a discussion that went on for a long time on how to do that and the best way to do that. So that was ongoing as well.
Well, it seems so organic, and I really believe in divine timing. So the Remembrance Garden is beautiful, and isn't it incredible that now we have this beautiful path that's connecting the two? So I think that really worked out the way it was supposed to. So can you guys tell us about the process? It started in 2016. It got approved by the board. Then we had the Remembrance Garden unveiling. So what came after that? What were the steps into getting this together?
Well, I think it was last fall that Nicole and I started talking about, hey, let's see if we can get this done, and maybe in time for the next fall. We thought it would be appropriate. We fortunately didn't have a name at the time that was going to be going up on the wall, so it could certainly tie into that and make it more of a celebratory moment, and yet still tie into the somber nature and the remembrance part of the memorial ceremony. And so that was our goal, was to try and get it done in time. Didn't quite work out that way, but from my perspective, Nicole and I just sort of set out a plan on how we thought things should work. Nicole had the contacts and the efforts that she made, she can tell you about with the getting the plaques made. But my thought was to reach back to Brian Kastner, and then we agreed that was a sort of a two-pronged approach here in trying to create a history that we could build onto plaques and then mount onto these cenotaphs. And we drew out a little sketch, a little diagram, and we thought we could have, these pedestals. We had 4 to work with. And how could you write a history that was significant enough to do justice to EOD, but at the same time realize the size restrictions that we had to deal with? So I called Brian and I asked Brian, said, hey, it's been 8 years, but are you still interested? And Brian was all over it. Brian Kastner was just all over it. He said, yes, absolutely, without question. And then Mike Vining has been, retired Sergeant Major Mike Vining, has been the historian for the National EOD Association for some time, but also, a lot of folks may not know, has essentially been our historian as well. He's done all the research and the effort to go into all the names and he has a small team of folks that I'm sorry I can't name them all, but I know Bob Leindecker's been involved and some others, Frank Robertson. They have looked at and done the diligence, the research to find the names of those who lost their lives doing EOD work in World War II, and so that we could put on names that deserve to be there from our past. Mike is a researcher. Mike is very diligent in that. Mike can write and has written several articles about, factual EOD history. What Brian brought was the prose, the wordsmithing, having authored several books and several articles at the time. So we asked the two, would they like to work together? And they were very much in favor of that. It became actually, I think, a very adept team, and wrote what I think is an eloquent, succinct, well thought out, yet brief, because only 390 words per plaque that we were able to put on there and come up with that history. And reserved 1. We used 3 for the history, and then we reserved 1 to do a history of the EOD Memorial and the Remembrance Garden. So ultimately, when people get out there and see this, they'll see that on one side of the path are 3 pedestals with 1 plaque each for the history of EOD, and then on the opposite side is the one for the memorial and the remembrance of it.
It's incredible. So what would you say the intent of this history path is?
Well, from my perspective, it is to remember our past. The old saying is that you don't know where you're going, you can't remember your past, you're doomed to failure, right? Stretching the words around a bit, but we need to know who we are and where we came from. And when we dedicated the Remembrance Garden, one of the things I said was that there's a path connecting the two. And when we made the path, it had curves in it. And that's what the curves in it represented the life of an EOD tech, because it's never a straight shot. There's curves and there's challenges and things you have to do in your life that maybe aren't always easy. So there's, those twists and turns are part of life. And so that was sort of with an intent to come back later and tie that together. And I think that was the appropriate place to put the history garden, because now you have this path that connects the memorial to the Remembrance Garden, to the life of the EOD tech between the two. And now we have the history linking it. But, it's there for everybody to understand and remember. It's there for the many people that come now to support their children just graduating from EOD school, that just learned how to spell EOD and don't know anything about it. So now it's there for them and their friends to come and so that they can learn more about it.
So it is truly sacred ground. And Nicole, I kind of want to ask you, as a spouse of it, former EOD tech, what do you think that this will mean to the families?
I think it will be an incredible addition, as Greg mentioned, on graduation day from EOD school. So many of these families come and they might have a general understanding of what EOD is or what their loved one is going, the field they're going into. Now they can walk the path and read the history and really understand firsthand, how far this history in this career field goes back and what it really means. And I think it'll give them a better foundation in understanding that. I think the fact that it is a connecting piece between the memorial wall and the Remembrance Garden just ties it all together and gives the families some place to know that is home. It's home for EOD, and it's not just, there's just multiple pieces to everything that we've done. And it also, I hope, will connect them to the foundation. The other piece that we hadn't mentioned is that there's now a plaque at the entrance to the memorial grounds that mentions that the grounds are maintained by the EOD Warrior Foundation.
Wow.
So hopefully that also will, from day one, connect the warrior and their families to the EOD Warrior Foundation, just in their knowledge about there being a foundation that supports this amazing community. If anything ever comes up or they're ever in need, that they will know from graduation day on that our organization exists.
Wow, that is incredible. Well, I was going to ask if there were certain people that you wanted to acknowledge or that had roles in this project.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you just read my mind. There really is, apart from Nicole's shepherding of this entire event and bringing together the pieces that we needed, the folks that were able to do the plaques, create the plaques and get all of that here, and that contracting effort that you have to do, the business side of things. There's a lot of effort in that, but also Mike Vining and Brian Kapsner for their effort and a lot of personal time that they spent in writing and rewriting and ultimately coming to an interesting take on how to write this, involving changes over time through technology and recognizing EOD. There was a lot of effort on their part. But I also need to say that our chairwoman for the site and through the planning process was very, very involved. Absolutely need to mention JT Crocker. JT took this so very personally. He has, one of the things when he joined us on board is one of the things I talked with him about. He's taken on to heart, and that's the legacy aspect. He's always researching, always looking, and I'm not sure that he didn't camp out there a night or two trying to make sure that this happened. Very, very heavily involved, not just from aspects, but in being out there hands-on and helping to create the actual pedestals and mounting them and all of that effort. His heart is so wide open in terms of taking care of everything out there. It's a great thing. Back to where things are due, go back to early 2013 with the merger when we had those cenotaphs. There were other people too that, rightly so, were trying to figure out what to do with those. And so there have been people that have come and gone from the organization, but was always trying to figure out a way that we could use those and other people's. Pay respect where respect is due, right? And make sure that we get the thanks to those that deserve it. And I hopefully haven't missed anybody. Obviously, we've had support from the community to do this. The folks that came out and did the work, the company that did the work, were vested. It wasn't just a contract to them. They were also the same people that did the Remembrance Garden work. So, they were totally vested and bent over backwards to do everything they could. There's a lot of people to thank. If I've missed anybody, my apologies, and I probably owe something cool.
Well, and all along the way, we've had the support and partnership of the schoolhouse too, which is super important, right? I mean, we own we maintain the memorial grounds, but the schoolhouse has supported us and shared their thoughts, shared their insider perspective all along the way. And the leadership has changed over the years. And the amazing thing is that even in the leadership changes, their support has not wavered. So it's really incredible to see the relationship with the foundation and Institute House leadership have developed over years and how strong it is. And that is only a tribute and benefit to the community.
Thank you, Nicole. You saved me a whole lot of cold and wet things. I not having mentioned that's Julie EOD and the staff there. Yeah, they've been fantastic. Both, kept.
Thank you so much, Greg and Nicole, for taking the time to talk to us about the EOD History Path. It is such a beautiful gift to the community for all of our techs, active duty veterans, and their families. So thank you very much.